What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another Real Talk episode. Today is all about optic mounts. Specifically, we're going to be talking mostly about cantilever, one-piece cantilever mounts for flat top AR-15 style receivered firearms. But we're going to go through a bunch of like red dot mounts and things like that. Just go through kind of my history, my journey through these buying all these different mounts and what I found works best. We're going to talk a lot about different type of top dot, offset dot, things like that, and the systems that I prefer or what I've learned through the years of using said things. And but yeah, that's pretty much going to cover what we're going to go through today. And we're going to go through a bunch of the guns behind me and the way that I have the optics mounted up, and we'll talk about those mounts as we go. But before we do, as always, we do have to take a moment to thank the biggest sponsor of the channel, which is Brownells. If you guys do want to support the channel, head over to rangedaybro.com, check out our discounts page, our loadouts page. We have an email sign-up list over there if you guys don't mind dropping your email in there. Also, if you like this video even a little bit, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let me know down in the comments, what is your favorite LPVO mount, or what is your favorite dot mount? Do you use risers? Do you not use risers? Let me know down in the comments. I'd like to keep a pulse on what my audience and what you guys are doing out there and what works for you guys. So let's just start off with the old school. This is actually not truly old school because back in the day, the carry handle was one piece with most AR-15 upper receivers. Now we have what we call the flat top receiver, where this is now a cool a hipster option to bolt on to the top of your upper receiver group. So you might have see something like this, like an old Colt Commando. This is actually not a Colt Commando. This is a Daniel Defense Mark 18. But you might have seen something similar to this, a 10.3 or an 11.5 inch Colt Commando with a fixed front sight post and a carry handle upper. That was pretty common back in the day, way before my time. Believe it or not, I'm not that old. I'm actually a 93 kid. So, but anyways, starting back in the day with the carry handle, I've actually never used the carry handle for anything more than a backup iron sight and a carrying method for my gun. I've never actually mounted a optic on a carry handle, unless we're talking about way back in the day. In my airsoft days, I definitely had a carry handle ACOG on here. But as far as actually training with like real things, I've never actually run one. But I thought this was a super cool little like homage to my childhood. You know, every 80, I was a 90s kid, but I also had way like older brothers. I was the youngest, so all the movies were always older movies. I played a lot of video games and stuff. So this carry handle is pretty cool, I think. So we'll just follow up with the carry handle into the AK rail. Now, unfortunately, I no longer have an AK. I actually had to offload my Arsenal milled receiver AKs to pay for my nods. So nods are cool, but it does hurt a little bit to not have my AKs anymore, especially for what I got rid of them for, which was ridiculously underpriced. But I still have my Midwest Industries little AK rail here, which is a great little rail. I don't know a ton about all the options that are out there for AK stuff, but this was one of my favorites. And so it was out. I just thought I'd mention it real quick. Fairly lightweight for how big it is, actually. It actually weighs a lot less than the carry handle. But this is an Aero Precision carry handle, by the way, for those of you who are wondering. And I'm running out of space already to set stuff. Well, since it's in my hands, I guess we'll start here. We'll move more into and get into more in depth with the cantilever style scope mounts in a little bit. But I want to talk first about, red dots and dot mounts, because this is one of the biggest things I would always tell people who are just starting out. So this is a Hydra, but I've blacked it out. As you guys can tell, I hate loud branding on anything, really. Like that's one of the biggest critiques I had on the Laroo rifle behind me right there. It's just got his name on it like 1,000 times. But anyways, what I would always say about these Holosun cheap optics is, if you're gonna buy one, then at least upgrade the mount, because the mount is ridiculously flimsy and cheap out of the box. It's it'll work for, again, airsoft, but if it's going to take any kind of, real abuse, if you're actually going to be using them, if you're going to be using it to defend your life with, at the very least, upgrade the mount to something that is more sturdy, that it comes from a more reputable company that isn't Chinesium. I know the optic itself is Chinesium aluminum, but at least what you're bolting it up to, what you're depending on it to hold zero with, can be a little bit more sturdy without breaking the bank or going crazy. So this is a Reptilla mount right here. This is their 193. When I bought this optic from Primary Arms, it had the option to just like add this on for like $89 or something like that. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. Is it my favorite looking? No. Is it my favorite like function-wise? I mean, no, it's not a QD or anything like that. I would have preferred a QD, but it's not the end of the world, especially for a dot like this. It's not the end of the world. But why have backup irons if you can't even see through them if you don't have a QD? Now, I keep tools on my kit so I can, you know, if I have enough time, bust out my flathead screwdriver, spin this guy off if I ever had a failure with it. But anyways, I say all that to say it's pretty awesome for the price, especially for bundling it on primary arms. Again, I think it was like $89 or something like that. Now, my first Hullison 503G that I had purchased, I believe this is again a 503G, something like that, in that vein. I got the solar backup on there. The first one I bought, I used an ADM riser for, and I really love that ADM riser. It was definitely it looked like a mailbox. It was just a big rectangle. There was nothing fancy about it. It looked very basic. It looked very like GWatt, early GWatt era, but it had a QD, which ADM has one of the most famous, popular QDs on the market. And they're OEM manufacturer for a ton of different companies as well. So they're really well respected for their QD. It's my favorite. And I really enjoyed that one. I did sell that Optic and the mount with it at the time. And so I went with the Reptilla because, again, the price, you really can't beat it. I don't remember what the ADM went for. Somebody let me know down in the comments. My guess is around like $120 around there, which does seem like a lot, especially when considering the Optic is like around that price, like $150 to $200. But I tell you right now, if you're going to go with a cheap Optic, at least get a better mount. And that way, if you do decide to upgrade the Optic later, you already have a solid mount to put your new aim point or whatever it is you want to put on here. So we started with this guy because it was in my hands, but I have become a very big fan of Reptilla on their scope mounts, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But before I do that, let's continue with the red dot conversation. And let's just go to this guy right here. So that's on me. All right, there we go. That drum mag has made a lot of problems for me. All right, sorry about that. Little technical difficulties with the hold-up displays. That is not hold-up displays' fault. You're supposed to clip those guys in. There's a little clip on there. But I am habitually, just like I'm moving things around on my rifles, I'm always moving my wall around, so I don't want to clip in these hooks. And it's just an extra step to have to move them. But that drum mag has been getting in the way with this rifle. I should have foreseen that happening on camera, but these are unedited, so you guys got to watch me struggle and embarrass myself. But anyways, back to the conversation of mounts. So on this guy, on the Sig Spear LT, this is the 11.5 SBR version for those of you wondering, 5.56. We are running the Unity fast riser system. And I guess I didn't really explain on the Mark 18 why I go with the higher mounted optics, especially on dots, because the major reason is for passive aiming with night vision. As you guys can see, this guy right here is a Inforce. This is their IR and white light. So right now it's set to white light. With the flip of a switch, it goes to IR. So obviously you guys can't see that. Flip it back, it's back to white light. The reason I put my optics on a higher level is for passive aiming with night vision. And the reason I prefer to passive aim with night vision is because most of the time when I'm shooting night vision, I'm not doing, all the time, I've never shot night vision CQB, to be quite honest. So it's outdoors. And if I'm preparing for a shit hit the fan scenario or any type of invasion scenario where it's a near peer or somebody else who may have nods, I'm gonna want to passive aim. That's just the reality of the situation. And so that's why I set everything up to be tall enough so that if I want to, I have the option to passive aim. I do have one laser, which is the CQBL from Steiner. They don't even make this thing anymore, but it's a very minimalist. It's just a Viz and an IR laser. It's very affordable and very small, which I like about it. Very small form factor, one little fire button in the back. And so I do train with this. That's IR, my bad. So I do train with this guy regularly when I'm shooting night vision, but I do try to train more often passively aiming because of those reasons, right? Any kind of near peer threat, even the Taliban has nods now. So that is why I like the fast riser. Now, a couple things to cover with the Unity specifically, because I've used this one the longest, technically the longest, and it works phenomenally well. I mean, it's very simple. It's kind of insane how much they cost for how simple they are, but I appreciate the quality that comes out of the box for that price. I would love to see them be cheaper, but it is what it is. So this guy, this is already a lower 1/3 EOTech. This puts it up to, I believe, a 2.26 inch center line. Somebody let me know. I'm not the analytic guy. I'm not the guy who's going to be like telling you exact specs here. I'm the guy who like looks through it. Okay, looks good, feels good. Let's go run it. But I've been running this fast riser on the EXPS series for a very long time, for many years now. So I'm used to this. This is kind of what I'm comfortable with. And it's, again, super simple. I think the newer ones now have a little hex head like this guy does to allow for the ADM QD to be attached to it if you wanted to have a QD on the fast riser. The beautiful part about the flip to center magnifier mount is that, number one, doesn't snag at all. It's right in line. So when I need it, I pick it up. When I don't need it, I push it down. It stays out of the sight. There's no snag, extra snag hazards there. And when I'm not using it, like if this is going to be my nightstand gun, home defense gun, whatever, I don't need it, I could just take it off with the QD, put it in a piece of kit, set it aside. And then on this guy, when I am running backup irons, the EOTech itself has a QD. So I can take the EOTech off if it went down, if it died for whatever reason, and I could run my backup irons. So I don't think it's really necessary to have a QD on the fast riser for that reason. I can just remove my optic that's mounted to it quickly and not have to worry about actually removing the mount itself. I could look right over it very easily. So that is that. Now this setup is quite expensive, especially once you add the EOTech and the magnifier itself. If you wanted to go for the G45 and the actual EOTech, it's a very expensive setup once you add, because the flip to center magnifier mount is like $250. Now, Unity has since came out with their own magnifier. It's a 4X magnifier. I haven't used it. I have no experience with it, but it is built into the mount. So the mount and the magnifier are integral, one piece. They're built in together. And I've heard good things about it. I, again, have no experience, so I can't speak to it. But this is kind of my go-to is the Unity, because it is so small and it's very lightweight. It adds virtually no weight to the gun. And the only downside is if you want to use a magnifier with the optic you're putting on this fast riser, you either need the flip to center or another fast riser with a flip to side to bring them to the same center line, so you can use them both at the same time. So that is that. This is kind of my go-to for risers. Let's see if I could do this a little more eloquently, putting it back. There we go. Oh, still having trouble. There we go. All right. Boom. Now, before we move on to scope mounts, we have several other things to cover real quick. So Springfield Kuna right here. On this guy, we have the American Defense Manufacturing optic riser here. So this guy, I think it's their XLR 1700, something like that. Their naming nomenclature is terrible, so I don't really know. But this guy's pretty slick. This has the titanium levers. The only downside, it's good because it's longer, so you have a lot of options for what you can mount up on it. But also, I think they designed it that way so that you could put a magnifier on here as well. The only downside is if you want your magnifier with the eye relief that you need it to be, you'd have to run this thing like all the way back potentially. And then, then you're forcing your optic, everything has to come back with it. So that's the only downside there. You can move that rail forward and backwards with those screws right there. So as you can see, this front part here has, is tapped, and then you can move it whichever direction you want on the base to either center it up. I like to run my stuff further forward, so that's why it's further forward. I forget where I had this mounted, but we'll figure it out. It's a PCC. It doesn't need to be that accurate as long as I'm on steel at 25 yards. I'm joking, of course, but do it for the gram. I got to get you guys the footage, the shots I need. Really cool QD. This is the titanium levers again. So ADM, really well known for their quick attach methods. They work really well. They have this little locking mechanism right here. So you push that guy down in order to unlock it. When it's not being pushed down, it won't walk itself free. So that's really good. And they work even on like the SCAR 17. They work under heavy recoil. I've tested it. Actually, we'll talk about it in a moment. I have an ADM mount on the SCAR. But this is another option for if you wanted to buy one riser. This is more expensive because of the titanium levers. But even without those, I believe it's still like around $175 compared to like the $99 for the fast riser. But again, you could mount both onto this and have just one riser for both. So that's an option for those of you who are wondering. I just wanted to talk about that real quick. And then lastly, let's talk about this guy, which I purchased after I got the Reptilla mount and the Holosun. So Brownells, shout out Brownells for sending out the Aimpoint T2. And they also sent out this Unity fast riser for the Aimpoint T2. So the reason I wanted to go with the Unity is because, and I'm just realizing this now, this may be an issue with this QD place right here, but I wanted to go with the HRF Concepts Skiff, which is like a little diving board that comes up the front here, so that I can then mount up my IR laser and not have to worry about clearing any kind of tape switches or anything like that with my IR laser, or any kind of splash. This is just a placeholder. I'm eventually going to get a better laser. They're just so ridiculously expensive, so I'm holding out. But I still wanted this mount to test it out, and I like all the Unity stuff. So again, huge shout out to Brownells. This one does have that little hex head there, so you can see. I'm pretty certain, I'm 99% sure that's so that you can accept the QD lever if you wanted to, but this one did not come with it. But I think that they're just future-proofing that for that reason. Again, this is a 1.93, I believe it is, height. I don't know 100% sure. It might be 226. It might bring the optical center line to 226. I think the mount itself is a 193. But this guy has a set of backup irons built right in. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but there's a rear sight and a front sight, like pistol peep sights essentially. If you guys can see that, it's not gonna wanna focus there. It's okay. You guys get the, oh, there it is. You can see on the YouTube plaque. So very short sight radius, but in a pinch, it's better than nothing. So it's really cool that it comes built in with that, but there's another option for you. This guy is more expensive for sure than the Reptilla, but I do like that there's some aftermarket support, like the Skiff, to add a little diving board if you wanted to. Another one that I've heard good things about, but I've never actually used, is the Castle Group. But since I don't have any experience with it, I'll just leave it at that. Let you guys let me know down in the comments what you think about that. So we'll move on from that to the, let me just double check. Real quick, let's talk ACOG mounts. Because, you guys know I have a love-hate relationship with the ACOG, but I still have my ACOGs against my better judgment. So this guy right here is a Unity Fast COG mount. Really cool option for raising it up and pushing it back. Again, if you don't have to run a rear iron sight, then you can push it back pretty far and still get a pretty comfortable length of pull with your eye relief that is required. This one does have the offset option on a 193 offset. It's still too short to run nods. There's not enough room. So I bought it as the 193, hoping that I'd be able to get nods in there and use nods with it. I'm trying to see if I can get the dot shown for you guys. I can't get it to work. But it's still great for an offset for up close stuff. I honestly am happy I got the taller one, but it's just not really feasible for nods. I tried it. It's just really not happening. Big fan of that, but a very expensive optic setup for an ACOG. Set this guy down and let's talk about this guy. So this is my BRN4 from Brownell. So it's an HK 416 clone. So you guys will notice right away a taller upper receiver, not by much, but it does make a difference when you're talking about optical height. This guy is featuring the ADM ACOG mount, which is also a great mount. You can mount the ACOG further back. In this case, I decided not to because this TA11, I believe it is, the 3.5 power ACOG has a much better eye relief than the TA31, I believe it is, like the OG 4X ACOG. So I don't really need all that eye relief on this guy. So I decided just to mount it up just how it is. Like right there, I'm sitting with a no scope shadow whatsoever right there, boom. So a much more forgiving eye box than the TA31. ADM, again, ADM quick detach levers on here. Great little setup. It sits nice and low, which I like because, again, this is already a little bit taller. So it still gets me a pretty heads-up shooting position compared to if this was on a traditional AR, I'd have to smush down just a little bit lower. But I do like this optic mount. I'll just shout it out. Another one that I've had that I've never really fully done enough testing with to even talk about it on the channel, but I'll mention it because Connect Development Group is a pretty awesome company. They make a lot of really cool stuff. This is their slide lock. This is for the ACOG. The only reason I haven't done a ton of testing on this is because right when I got this, I started moving away from the ACOG, and that's the only reason I haven't really, I've never even mounted up the ACOG on this. This is literally brand new. I've never actually used it, but I've always been curious about whether or not it would be great or whether it'd be okay. But it's a little bit taller. Again, no information on it, so I don't even know why I'm showing it, but I figured I would just shout them out because I like them as a company, and they do make a lot of really cool stuff. Lastly, before we move on to the scope mounts, I know you guys are dying, I'm sorry to keep dragging this out, But recently acquired a Hydra mount, or a Hydra thermal, clip-on thermal from D&T Optic. So really, really badass clip-on thermal. Haven't gone hunting with it yet, but I've used this thing a ton just scanning with it. And this thing is absolutely awesome as a handheld thermal. We'll have more information on how it shoots and hunting with it and all that coming soon. But again, ADM quick detach mount, bolts up right to this thing. I have a little spacer in there that I got from my Vortex, my old Vortex magnifier, just to lift it up a little bit because it was pretty darn low, and it's still pretty low. It's not perfect. I'm still toying around with how to get this to mount perfectly in front of my different scopes. So that's part of the conversation, I guess you could say, that we're going to have with the Optic, with the scope mounts themselves. But I wanted to show you guys, again, ADM is on everything as far as OEM goes. So now that we got that out of the way, let's start with, should we go in order by price, or should we go in order by my experience with them? I say we go in order with my experience with them because I know that for a fact. I don't know what the prices are for all of these. So let's start with this guy right here. So, surprise, surprise, Scar 17 with the ADM mount. Now, the actual ADM that I started with was the Recon, which I do not have here. It was the one that had the little like the clamps that clamped on the sides. And I ended up selling that scope mount with the scope a while back. But this is their Delta, or their heavy version that was made specifically for the Scar 17. Again, it has their QD levers on the side here. It was a really cool tanadizing that you can see the top ring that I replaced this original top ring with this guy that has the Picatinny rail on there on the 45 degree, because these turrets were so big. I wanted something I could look through both turrets, as you guys can see, and pick up a red dot there. Now, the only reason I have a dot up there right now is because the Scar has fallen way down on my list of like guns that I take seriously and train with for many reasons, having nothing to do with the scope mount. The scope mount's been phenomenal. It is very heavy. It is, I would say, extremely overbuilt for the reasons of handling heavy recoil, like the Scar 17 is known for. And you know, this can obviously handle anything up to 50 BMG. Very solid mount, very large mount, heavy, pretty expensive, but I have no issues with it whatsoever. Again, they have different top mount options. Now, I'm going to set this guy down because there's really nothing to speak about on this one. I believe this is a 1.54 inch height, which is, again, fine for the type of stock and the use case for the Scar 17. But the Recon mount that I originally purchased, I want to talk to you guys about these right here. So these are the Vajala tactical hanger mounts. So these guys would replace one of the rings on... It actually would go this way. Nope, it'd go this way. It would replace one of the rings on the Recon mounts from ADM. And then what this would do is, instead of going to a 45 that would come off your rail at the top of your pick rail, you'd be able to turn your gun to a 45 and have a red dot, you know, like a RMR, whatever it was, directly on its side, looking at, like, you know, instead of it being up and down this way, left to right, it would just be completely on its side, 90 degrees. When you canted the gun sideways, it would put this optic directly sideways. And what that would do is essentially give you an option for an offset dot that was not rail mounted, that was still mounted up on the optic itself. But I don't know. I don't know what the benefit was to it. Like, you really couldn't passive aim with it. It's better than having it on the rail, in my opinion, but it still was like, it took a lot of getting used to for a lot of people, and zeroing it, like the windage and elevation were just reversed. The windage was your elevation in that case, and the elevation was your windage. But it's a cool concept if you already had that scope, because a lot of scope mounts just don't have that attach in this clamping method this way, instead of clamping top to bottom, don't have an option for an offset in this way. Now, a lot of them kind of have gone away from doing it this way, but even some of them, like I believe Laroo has the same clamping method, which we'll talk about the Laroo in a second, but it puts it at the top 45. So I wanted to talk about that real quick, and now we did for probably a little bit too long. So we will skip right on past that, and we'll go from the ADM to the, let's just skip to the Laroo since we just talked about it for a second, even though this is a more This is a more recent scope mount that I've been messing with in the last 6 months. So this is the Laroo scope mount. Has their own famous QDs. Laroo has been famous for their QDs since the GWatt era. Mark Laroo has been around for a long time, and his QDs were for a long time, again, especially in the early 2000s and 2012, 2014s, 2016s, was regarded as like one of the best QDs on the market, and they still work very well. I just don't hear that much about them anymore. But if you go back in those old forums, you could still hear Mark Laroo sounding off. But it's a great optic mount. It's just like the ADM. I know there's certain reasons why this is supposed to be a better mounting system coming this way versus top to bottom. I think it has to do with like the scope centering itself out and removing tension from itself, the way that they bolt up. I think that's the whole idea behind the ADM. Somebody let me know down in the comments. I've never had an issue with the other style, but again, there's probably some science to this that I'm gonna butcher, or I'm gonna actually just leave it out because I don't know what the exact reason is. But again, I believe they have a replacement like ring where you can put a ring attachment here and then have like a 45-degree on the top dot there. But as far as an actual scope mount goes, it's pretty good. It's not too beefy, but it's not real anemic either. I would say it's probably like a heavy use optic mount. I wouldn't doubt that it's able to withstand some abuse. I've had no issues with it, but that's kind of it. It's like very simple, much like the ADM stuff. It's just like, just works. And this guy is, again, I believe on a 1.5-inch height, but with this taller upper receiver of the HK, it's perfect, especially for a precision gun. I don't want it any taller. So there's that. All right. Now let's move on to the mount that I've had, for scope mounts at least, the most experience with, which is the Badger Condition 1 current clone correct mount, if you want to call it that, for a lot of the contract guns that are going out with Night Force glass, with all the contract guns. You can see how dirty I actually shoot my guns, guys, believe it or not. But this mount is expensive. It is pretty beefy, especially once you add the top dot section here with this like ring. It then gets extended like a whole another ring and then a half ring. So you're adding a little bit of weight there. It's got a top plate system. So with these mounts, I've been going with the 1.7-inch height, especially on a flat top AR. I find that's like the best happy medium for me for a gun that I'm going to be shooting, in the prone for long range stuff, as well as shooting up close fast, a 12.5-inch AR-15. Like, yeah, I want to be able to prone out and group with this thing or take it out to 500 or 600 yards, but I'm also going to be primarily using this within 50 yards, up close, quick, with the red dot bright illumination, so on and so forth. So the 1.7 is kind of the perfect height for me. And then it puts your top dot pretty up there, but as long as you plan on using your top dot for passive aiming primarily, or for spotting your target out at distance and then dropping into your primary optic, it doesn't really matter quite as much. I have been fighting the urge for the longest time. Actually, since I started running top dots, I've been fighting the urge to not use my top dot as my primary aiming system at 1x, because I have like the best glass that money can buy, the Attacker. But even without the Attacker, even with the EOTech Voodoo and all these other optics we're going to talk about, it's so hard for me not to just use the top dot, because I just really love using the top dot. But it is a little bit too high. You lose your cheek weld with a 1.7-inch height. And even with some others, which we'll talk about here in a second, you lose your cheek weld. So it's really not ideal for using it as a primary 1x, and it defeats the purpose of having an LPVO, in my opinion. But in certain cases, we'll talk about it. I go back and forth. Like, I feel like it's the wrong thing to do, but it's what I want to do. And when I'm training, it seems just as fast, but I have less recoil control. But acquiring the dot seems even faster than it does with the, and it gets rid of that wonky feeling, that like drunk goggles feeling that you have with a 1x. Even the best LPVOs give me that feeling, like they're not true 1x's. So it gets rid of that weird delusion that it creates when you're aiming with both eyes open with a 1x on an LPVO. I know I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this in the comments, but it is what it is. That's just my opinion. But the Badger has been phenomenal. It is not quick detach. Again, I've been going with the 1.7s. Moving forward, I will probably start going with the if I decide to continue using my top dot as my primary aiming solution on 1x, I will probably start going with the 1.5, but I haven't decided that yet. I'm still trying to repent for my sins of using my top dot on 1X and go to the main optic. It's not that big of a deal, guys. It really isn't. I still get my hits. I still get them very fast, but it's just like I know it's wrong. And every time I start using the main optic again, I want to cheat back up into the top dot. But that's a conversation for another day. They have a ton of options. As you guys can see, there's little ports here for adding bubble levels. They have range cards you can add in. They have offset mounts. If you wanted to do an offset RMR or Holosun type style off the side here, you could. I just prefer the top dot again for passive aiming, and it's better for finding your targets and then dropping into your main optic. But these Badgers are phenomenally, they're just so well built. You could tell that they're absolute tanks. And so even, LPVOs get a lot of crap these days. And that's why I talk shit on the ACOG and people come back with, well, they're durable. They're super durable. Well, ACOGs have gone down in the past. Not that often, but they go down. And LPVOs have gotten way more durable, especially something like the Attacker. But even if you're not getting Attacker level durability, if you get a good durable mount, it resolves a lot of the problems that people were having in the early days of LPVOs or scopes. With scope rings, like those were just a lot more flimsy. These one-piece mounts are very solid. And so it takes a lot more than people realize to damage a scope body. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can certainly do it. But with that being said, I'm going to move on. I have a bunch of these. I think I have, let's see, 1, 2, I know I have at least 3 somewhere. There's another one in here somewhere. Of these Badger Condition 1 mounts. Oh, yeah, it's a black one. Where's it at now? Now, okay. This is great entertainment, guys. Sorry that this is so unplanned, unedited. But there's another one in here somewhere. I just can't seem to find it for whatever reason. I have one in black as well. It's in the Voodoo. Where's that guy? Oh, there it is. Okay. It's on the Griffin 12.5, which we'll show you guys as well. Why not? We looked for it for 15 minutes. Might as well show you guys. So again, same situation with the 1 to 10 Voodoo, and in this case, the Holosun 509T, the enclosed optic up top. So again, huge fan of these. I prefer it in the tan because it just looks better, but this is the one that was in stock when I bought that one. So and on this one, there's an extra plate between the RMR plate and the 509T. It requires a plate as well, so it's even taller, and it's a 1.7. So again, that's another case where you're definitely losing your cheek weld on that guy. And let's move on from there to a cheaper option, which is this guy right here. So this is the Arkin Optics cantilever mount, and it is holding right now the Trijicon Credo 1 to 8 that I've had for a very long time. Arkin makes a really solid mount. It's 154. It is solid aluminum, very well made. There's no QDs. It's in between being really beefy and being super lightweight. I'd say it's more on the beefy side. But guess what? They don't have a top dot option. So it kind of eliminates it from the question for me for a lot of my guns, especially because what I'm doing, LPVOs, I want a top dot. Can't do that as of today. But for like $79 or $80 with the code RDB, you get the best discount on the internet for them. And they're just really hard to beat for the price. Are they the most aesthetically pleasing? No. I mean, they just work. I mean, if you're looking for a solid scope mount that just works, it is a phenomenally good value. So that's all I could really say about it. I wish, and I think they will be coming out with eventually, because they're just missing out on a huge opportunity, in my opinion, to do something like a top dot like this guy. This is the Reptilla, actually. But to be able to replace one of these rings with a top dot mount option, but they just don't have it yet. So I can't really speak to that. But I've never had issues with it losing zero. It's been very durable, works great, and code RDB will save you guys money over at Arkin. So we'll skip past this one since, yeah, I also have the Arkin up there on the Mitchell Defense. It's been rock solid on that guy as well. And before I had it on that 1 to 8, before I had it on this 11.5 Super Duty, I had it on the Scar 17, and it withstood all that abuse. So worked really well for that as well. Now let's move on to this guy, because I'd say, so currently this optic mount is kind of tied for first place with the last one we're going to talk about, which I'll just spill the beans, is the Reptilla. The reason being, you have a very solid mount. This guy is not cheap either. The Reptilla and this and the Condition 1 are kind of all in the same ballpark. I think the primary arms, by the way, this is the primary arms PLXC optic mount. Probably helped to tell you guys that. Again, in between super beefy and super lightweight, more on the, I guess, lightweight side. It's kind of in the perfect place for me. The Condition 1's more on the heavy side. The Arkin's more on the lightweight side. This is more on the lightweight side, and same with the Reptilla. But this is also a 30 millimeter mount, so I'm feeling it even a little bit lighter than it would be with most of those are 34 millimeters. So, but again, this thing is like $280. It just has a one-piece top ring option, which is really cool. I'm already buying the top ring. Why do you need to buy a separate plate? I kind of get it, because like you could change out the plate if you wanted to and not have to buy the ring again. But I'm not going to be changing out my top dot like often. You know, as often I'm going to be changing out my scope. Like, it's not going to be happening. So this also has a single piece replacement top ring with the actual optic footprint that you want. Now in this case, it's an RMR footprint with a 509T. So again, I have a additional plate, but if I had a separate, like if this was a Condition 1, this would be like a whole 1/4 inch even taller. And this only, I believe, only comes in a 1.5 inch height. So we have a 30 millimeter mount, which is what the PLXC is, what it requires. We have a 1.5 inch height with a top dot, single piece top ring replacement. And so right here, I'm seeing my top dot. I still can maintain a chin weld. And this is what I've been wanting out of my Condition 1 mounts. I've wanted this 4th point of contact right here in order to use my top dot on the 1X. I know I should repent, but that is what I want to do instead of dropping into this guy. Now this guy, in this case, this does not have a red dot bright reticle. They do have a new version that is RDB. It is not coined. It is not trademarked by Range Day, bro. I wish it was, but it's just RDB means red dot bright. So they have a new version that's red dot bright. I have no excuse for the attacker. Besides, really no excuse, double no excuse, because it's on a 1.7 inch height, so it's even taller, and the top dot's even higher with the plate system that it has. So I really shouldn't be doing it with the attacker, but on this guy, it feels like I have the perfect excuse because it's not red dot bright, and I still maintain that 4th point of contact. So when I come up, I can quickly get my 4th point of contact, find my dot, it's right there. It is still very high up. I have this at a 50 to 200 yard zero. And this is a 12.5 spec war for those of you wondering, but it is still very high up, but it just feels right. And I know I should be using the main optic on the 1X for the 1X, but it just feels right. And it's still tall enough to use passively aiming with nods. So there's no issue there whatsoever, but I do really like this mount because it is very durable, seems like, at least. Again, I don't drop my guns from shoulder height onto steel plates, but I don't treat them like safe queens either. I use them. It's been dropped, it's been tossed around, I've fallen with it in my hands. It's solid, it hasn't lost zero, it's been very solid, but it also is right on the line of being like super lightweight and just really well designed. And so that's all I'll say about this. Let's move on to the Reptilla, because this guy has really won my heart over recently, and it's for a lot of reasons. So first of all, somebody is making all these scope mounts for Guesley, Reptilla. This looks very familiar to the Condition 1. I'm not making accusations. I have no idea. I don't know anything, but they look very similar. This guy does not have QD levers, so it looks, so it remains a little bit more lightweight than a lot of the ones that do have QD levers, but it's still very, very solid. It's got this big rib in the middle for reinforcement. It's got just 2 bolts in the top, but you can replace the 1 ring with a solid piece optic mount. Now, the reason I have this one and not this one on the gun is because this bell is such an intense angle right here with this. Which way I didn't move ahead? There we go. There you go. You can see it there with the YouTube plaque. See that angle right there? I needed the taller one in order to clear that because this guy was impacting that front of that bell with the front of this guy. So that's the only reason but I have it for show and tell now. Look, boom, 1 piece. So you're not adding unnecessary extra height. You're not adding unnecessary extra weight, but it is just very, very solid. Also, another thing to consider, look at the width of this ring right here. So this ring takes up a certain amount of space. So on a scope like this, where there's a very small window between your turrets and the front bell starting, I couldn't even use a condition one if I wanted to. In fact, I forgot about these guys over here because I really never use them for they have several key reasons I don't use them. Really just two key reasons. So back in the day when Griffin sent me that 12.5 pistol, they sent me these scope mounts too. Now look at these things. These things are unbelievably beefy, which is cool if you want, you know, for putting on a 50 BMG or an MRAD or something, right? Not really an AR-15 style cantilever mount that I would buy, but they wanted me to try them out. They are super beefy. There's two major problems with these. Number one, they're like a 1/4 inch height. So because of that super low clearance, any optics like the Arkin that has the little purging plug in the bottom of the body, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Or should I get it out for you? I'll get it out for you. Shout out Springfield Waypoint 2020 here. This guy right here, which as I'm saying that, I'm just noticing, I already noticed before, but I'm just noticing now, again on camera, it barely clears this rail. This little plug right here does not clear the bottom of this. It's too low and it's too wide. The mount itself is too wide, so that plug actually impacts the bottom there. So I can't use any scopes like this scope that has that little plug in it. So that's number one reason. It's too low for that. Otherwise, it would probably be on that rifle or on another rifle that I wanted to use it for. The second thing is, these things are just entirely way too wide. Like, I don't know what optic or what caliber you need to have that much surface area with. I'm sure some people would appreciate that. For me, it's just over-engineered. It's too wide. In fact, it wouldn't even fit because I was going to use it because the Steiner doesn't have that plug, right? Doesn't have that plug on the bottom. So I was going to use it with the Steiner, but it just would not even fit in that gap right there. It was just so close. I wasn't sure if I would damage the optic when I torqued it down. So I decided to go with the Reptilla. But again, two reasons I didn't even mention this one and why I haven't actually used any of these yet, because I have two of them. I gave one away at GunCon. But I hope one day I could actually try them out, but I just don't know why I would choose that over the other existing options. It's not to shit on Griffin. I mean, it is what it is, guys. People think companies send me things and I just say all good things about them. I don't. In fact, if I don't have anything nice to say, I usually won't even talk about it on the channel. But in this case, it just fits the topic way too well. So that is pretty much going to be it. So right now, I'm leaning all Reptilla. I just love how durable but lightweight these things are. I love the way that their top dot mounting system works. And yeah, this one is for the acro footprint, which is also the same as the Steiner MPS. So I've been really loving this thing. This is a 1.5 inch height. And again, I think this is the only height option that they have currently. And so it is, again, the same situation like the primary arms, PLXC right here. If I get this turret out of my way, or the lever, I can still maintain my chin weld and see that dot perfectly within my window. Now, is it perfect? No. My head's a little turned to the right. Like, I'd rather it be like right here, like with my Unity fast risers, but I can still get that fourth point of contact. It's not perfect, it's far from it, but in a pinch, I want that chin right there on that stock to be able to give me a little bit more stabilization. If I'm using that top dot, I'm usually shooting fast. But even when I'm just proned out, you know, easy chin reference, now I'm dropping down into my primary optic. So I really like that this mixes the durability with the lightweight setup. Very simple, less things to fail, less screws that need to go in here, like the Condition 1. Again, you have the ring itself, then you have the plate on top, and then you bolt your optic up to that. So there's like, you know, 6 screws right there that you're messing with and having one potentially fail. So I like how simple it is, and this has been my go-to. Now, again, I don't know if they have this in a 1.7 or even a 1.93. I'm not a big fan of 1.93 for optics, even if it's a LPVO. It just doesn't make sense. If you're running an LPVO, you have a top end on it for a reason. And if you've ever proned out and, you know, had to hold your neck up like that in the prone for a 1.93, it's just very uncomfortable after any amount of time that's not, you know, 5 to 10 seconds. So I'm not a fan of going that tall. It would be cool if Reptilla offered a 1.7. I don't know if they do. Somebody let me know down in the comments, or I'll pin a comment here in the pinned comment to show you guys if they do. But I believe it's just this one height for right now. But I'm absolutely in love with it, especially for what I do with the top dot. Now, if this was an LPVO, would I feel the same? Again, I'd rather have it be a 1.7 if I'm using an LPVO to look through and aim through with my primary optic, which is the way you should be doing it. But I do really like maintaining this right here, which with a 1.7, you're just not going to get it. You're going to be just off to where your beard hairs might be touching it, but you're not going to be able to get that point of actual contact there. So this video has been carried on way too long, as I can tell by the beads of sweat on my forehead. So thank you guys for staying to the end of the video. If you did, if you do want to support the channel, rangedaybro.com for any merch, any discounts, affiliates, all that good stuff is over there. This guy is up there as well, so you can get all the parts on this build to your heart's content. And they are codes and affiliate links, so when you use those, it does support the channel. So thank you to every single one of you for doing so. I love you guys. Drink a lot of water. Christ is King. Take care of yourselves.